Hello, good people of the fantasy community. My name is Seth Dewald, and I'm here today to give you the wide receivers that are must drafts, frankly, at their ADP. Without further ado, let's get into the video. And we are going to start today with Malik Nabers, who's currently coming off the board at pick 9, wide receiver 5. And last season, Nabers finished wide receiver 6 in fantasy points per game. He finished number 2 in targets amongst wide receivers with 170, despite playing just 15 games. And don't forget, this was his rookie season, and this was good for a target share of 34.9%, which ranked number 1 amongst wide receivers. So let's just put that into context for a moment. Jamar Chase, during his rookie season, with 17 games played, with Joe Burrow at quarterback, playing 16 games and throwing 34 touchdown passes. Jamar Chase was number 17 in targets with 128, number 23 in target share with 23.7%, number 5 in fantasy points per game with 17.9 and 13 touchdowns. Justin Jefferson, with Kirk Cousins at quarterback, playing 16 games and throwing 35 touchdown passes. Justin Jefferson during his rookie season was number 4 in targets with 153, number 3 in target share, number 9 in fantasy points per game with 17.1 and 7 touchdowns. To remind you, Malik Nabers played in 15 games, with Daniel Jones playing 10 games at quarterback, Drew Lock starting 5 games, Tommy DeVito playing in 2 games. Those 3 quarterbacks combined for 15 touchdown passes. Malik Nabers ranked number 2 in targets with 170, number 1 amongst wide receivers in target share with 34.9%, and number 6 in fantasy points per game with 18.2, and caught 7 of those 15 touchdowns. This year, the Giants' quarterback situation is much better, maybe not great, but it's significantly better in my opinion, and there are fail-safes in place as well. Russell Wilson projects to be the starter, and while he hasn't been great, he's been serviceable as a starting quarterback. In 11 games last season, Wilson finished with 2,482 passing yards, 16 touchdowns to 5 interceptions. When we extrapolate that to a 17-game season, Wilson would have finished with 3,836 yards, 25 touchdowns, 8 picks. Last year, the Giants starters combined for 3,228 passing yards, 15 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions. Wilson also ranked number 2 amongst quarterbacks in deep ball completion percentage at 46.7%. Malik Nabers ranked number 5 amongst wide receivers in deep targets last season. And on the surface, that seems like a match made in heaven. But if that doesn't work, we know Jameis Winston can elevate a wide receiver. Just ask Jerry Jeudy. Last season, when Winston was under center, Jeudy averaged 21 fantasy points a game. And if that doesn't work out, the Giants drafted Jackson Dart in the first round of the NFL draft this year. And I would argue all of those options are better, or at least have more upside, than the Giants' top option at quarterback last season, which was Daniel Jones. We also have to take into account that the team shouldn't be very good this year, and the Giants play in a tough division. They also have the toughest schedule in terms of winning percentage amongst NFL teams. So this means the Giants are going to be throwing the ball a lot, almost as much or maybe more than they did last season when they ranked number 7 in the NFL in pass attempts per game with 34.8 pass attempts per game. The Giants also still don't have much in the way for target competition for Malik Nabers. This is the current depth chart at the wide receiver and tight end positions for the New York Giants. Malik Nabers, Darius Slayton, Wan'Dale Robinson, Zach Pascal, Jalen Hyatt, Amir Smith-Marset, and at tight end, they have Theo Johnson, Daniel Bellinger, and Chris Manhertz. And they didn't really add anything at wide receiver of significance. And this means there isn't anything standing in the way of Nabers seeing a 35% target share again in an offense with a better quarterback who can throw the ball deep down the fields in negative game scripts that should be favorable for wide receivers. As a result, Malik Nabers is my pick to finish as the wide receiver 1 overall in 2025. And there's a real chance he's the number 1 overall pick in 2026 fantasy drafts, but let me know what you think in the comments. Next player we're going to talk about is Drake London. Speaking of target shares, Drake London should have an insane target share this season. Last season, London finished as the wide receiver 5 overall, wide receiver 13 in fantasy points per game with 16.5. London ranked number 3 in targets amongst wide receivers with 157, and number 6 in target share at 29.1%. In the 3 games where Michael Penix attempted at least 5 passes, weeks 16 through 18, London averaged 13 targets per game and averaged 23 fantasy points per game during that time, albeit This is a short sample size. In week 18, he scored 40.7 fantasy points, and that skews that average quite a bit. London also ranked number 3 amongst wide receivers in first read target share per fantasy points data at 35.4%. Drake London also grades out very well in reception perceptions charting. Against man, his success rate was 74.1%, 79th percentile. Zone, 81.6% success rate. He's in the upper percentile at 77th percentile. Against press coverage, 87th percentile success rate. Very good, very strong, even strong against double coverage. And when you look at his route tree, according to reception perception, it's very much green with a few exceptions on corner and post routes. There also shouldn't be much standing in the way of London seeing a 30% target share plus in 2025. The Falcons depth chart at wide receiver is Drake London, Darnell Mooney, Ray McLeod, Casey Washington, Kaderil Hodge, Jamal Agnew. And at tight end, we know they have Kyle Pitts, who's been a perennial disappointment. But after Kyle Pitts, it's Charlie Warner. The Falcons defense also wasn't very good last season as they ranked number 23 in points allowed per game amongst NFL teams at 24.9. They did focus on defense in the offseason and spent 2 first-round picks on pass rushers, Jalen Walker and James Pierce Jr., but the rookies are likely going to need some time to adjust to the NFL game, and the defense should by no means be elite. This means the Falcons are going to have to score points, and London should be the primary beneficiary of that. My one concern is there is a world where Michael Penix isn't very good, but I'm trusting that Penix is at least better than what we saw from Kirk Cousins last year, and if he is, London is a very good bet to make at his current ADP. Let's talk now about Rashee Rice. There's some uncertainty surrounding Rashee Rice. For starters, he's coming back from an injury, and secondly, there's a suspension looming from his escapade after the Chiefs won the Super Bowl during his rookie season. So let's address some of those concerns. First off, Rice looks to be recovering nicely from his torn LCL. He suffered in week 4 of the 2024 season. He's already running routes according to a June 29th post to Twitter. To address the concerns surrounding his legal status, Drew Davenport doesn't seem to think that Rashee Rice's trial is going to go to criminal court this year, which means he's likely not going to get suspended this season. So now we are left with the question, if Rashee Rice is fully recovered, and he appears to be, and if he won't be suspended, which it doesn't look like he's going to be, how good will he be for fantasy? And will he fall into that role that he had before his injury, or will he take on another role in the offense? And when Rashee Rice had a 70% snap share or more, he averaged 18.9 fantasy points per game. And this isn't just last year. It was the year before in his rookie season. Last season, Justin Jefferson averaged 18.7 fantasy points per game, and he's averaged 19.4 fantasy points per game for his career. Last season, Jamar Chase averaged 23.9 fantasy points per game, but he's averaged 19.55 fantasy points per game throughout his career. Last season, Amon-Ra St. Brown averaged 18.6 fantasy points per game. So you can see the kind of upside that Rashee Rice potentially has. And Rashee Rice, according to Matt Harmon, has a solidified role in the offense. And this is according to Matt Harmon on reception perception. This is a quote. It was pretty clear from the very first drive of the season, that the Chiefs were going to pummel Rice with targets over the middle, particularly slants, to take advantage of the cavernous space this offense always receives with Patrick Mahomes under center, and was made even more notable with Xavier Worthy's speed added to the mix. So with speedsters like Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown, I would expect that role to be very similar in 2025. I also trust Andy Reid to produce an offense that can move the ball and scheme up targets for a wide receiver that has the size to win over the middle of the field. And his size and skill set make him the most likely candidate to lead the Chiefs wide receivers in targets and to resume his role that would have had him on track to be a top 5 wide receiver and a breakout last season. Let's talk about Garrett Wilson for a moment. Garrett Wilson currently coming off the board at pick 29, wide receiver 16. Last season, Wilson finished as the wide receiver 10 overall and the wide receiver 18 in fantasy points per game. This was by far his best finish in terms of fantasy production. Over the last 3 seasons, Wilson has not missed a single game and has averaged 156 targets per season. Wilson has never finished lower than number 6 amongst wide receivers in targets, and Wilson has also proven to be an extremely good wide receiver according to reception perception charting, with a 94th percentile win rate against man, an 82nd percentile win rate against zone, and an 86th percentile win rate against press coverage. And this season, Wilson should have a massive target share within the offense yet again, because there isn't much standing in the way of him receiving that target share. Currently, this is what the wide receiver tight end depth chart looks like for the New York Jets. We have Garrett Wilson, Josh Reynolds, Alan Lazard, Tyler Johnson, Arian Smith, and Malachi Corley at wide receiver. And at tight end, they're going to be relying on rookie Mason Taylor, and Jeremy Rucker is there as well. There is a new quarterback in town, and we should talk about him for a moment. Justin Fields has been signed to be the starting quarterback for the New York Jets, and that's both a good thing and a bad thing at the same time. The good news is we've seen Justin Fields support top producers at the wide receiver position before. DJ Moore in 2023 was the wide receiver 9 overall, 16.9 fantasy points per game. The bad news is Fields has never attempted more than 370 passes in a single season. Although Fields was on a 17-game pace for 484 pass attempts in 2023, which would have ranked him number 17 amongst quarterbacks that season, which isn't terrible for a quarterback that likes to run a lot. But Fields also hasn't stayed healthy for an entire 17-game NFL season. So while the total amount of targets available in the offense is likely to go down this season, Wilson's target share should remain very high based on the amount of first read targets that he's seen in the past. Last season, Wilson ranked number 4 in first read targets and design targets with 131, and number 13 in first read target share at 31.7%. That's not going to change with Justin Fields at quarterback. So Garrett Wilson is going to see as many targets as he can handle in this offense that should be better than last season. I'm going to lean into some uncertainty with this next pick, and I'm going with Travis Hunter, currently coming off the board at pick 51, wide receiver 29. The first thing we need to address when discussing Travis Hunter is how much is he going to play defense? And this is a legitimate concern, because if he only gets a 50, 60% snap share on offense, that's clearly going to limit his upside in terms of offensive production. But I'm willing to lean into some uncertainty here, because the upside of Travis Hunter is massive. First of all, Hunter's college production was really solid. In 2024, he caught 96 passes, 1,258 receiving yards, and scored 15 touchdowns while playing both offense and defense. Secondly, Hunter was an elite college wide receiver according to Reception Perception's rookie profile. Hunter's chart lights up green, and his win percentages are all in the 90% or higher range, or the elite range. Against man, 92nd percentile win rate. Against zone, 97th percentile win rate. And against press coverage, a 97th percentile win rate. And his chart is all green. Now, if there is some criticism for Hunter, it's the diversity of routes that he ran during college. He didn't really run many deep routes, post routes, corner routes, or out routes, but he ran a lot of slants, curls, and digs. So perhaps the diversity of his route tree isn't quite there. But on tape, Hunter profiles as a really good route runner. If you don't believe me, don't take my word for it. Here's what Matt Harmon of Reception Perception had to say about Travis Hunter in his profile. He said, what makes his pro translation truly tantalizing is that while he's undeniably awesome as a corner, he might well be one of the best prospects ever charted for Reception Perception when just considering his wide receiver work. You'll see over the length of his profile that Hunter truly doesn't possess a real weakness in his game and is good to elite at all facets of playing the position. I also believe in Liam Cohen as a play caller, and I trust that he will know what to do with both Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter playing wide receiver, because he just called plays for a team that had both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. Last season, the Buccaneers ranked number 4 in the NFL in points scored per game at 29 points scored per game. And Baker Mayfield had his best statistical season as a pro with 41 touchdowns, 4,500 passing yards. And I would expect Trevor Lawrence to take a jump with him calling plays and with more weaponry in the offense. The Jaguars defense, also not great last season. They ranked number 27 in the NFL in points allowed per game at 25.6 points allowed per game. And outside of adding Eric Murray at strong safety and Jordan Lewis at corner, and I suppose you could say Travis Hunter at corner as well, the Jags didn't really add much to their defense. So the Jags should have to keep pace with their opponents, and that should mean that they are going to have to throw the ball to keep up. And it should be a really good offensive environment for a rookie wide receiver like Travis Hunter, who has insane upside. So I'm willing to take the bet with him at his current ADP because of that upside. Let's shift to Rome Odunze, who currently has an ADP of 59, wide receiver 33 off the board. Rome Odunze did not have a good rookie season at all. He finished as the wide receiver 49 and the wide receiver 56 in fantasy points per game. And while these numbers aren't good, I do think it's important to point out that Odunze saw 101 targets, which ranked number 31 amongst wide receivers. He caught 54 passes for 734 yards and 3 touchdowns. Odunze also ranked number 2 amongst wide receivers in unrealized air yards with 917, which tells me Odunze's season should have been much better than it was. And this is further proved by the fact that Odunze's expected fantasy points per game ranked number 37 amongst wide receivers at 13.7. Now, the runway is clear for Odunze to break out in 2025. Keenan Allen's gone. Ben Johnson is now the coach and is a massive upgrade from Shane Waldron and Thomas Brown. The Bears also dramatically improved their offensive line. Odunze also charted very well according to reception perception. He ranked 71st percentile win rate against man, 52nd percentile win rate against zone, and 87th percentile win rate against press coverage. Odunze wasn't great against zone coverage, just average, so that's an area he's going to have to improve. But I'm willing to bet that Ben Johnson will be able to coach up Odunze and scheme him up in an offense that should make the most out of his talents. And the offense should move at a rapid pace based on Ben Johnson's history as a play caller. And I did a little deep dive. Go check it out on Twitter, but I'll read you the highlights here now of Ben Johnson's play calling tendencies. His teams have finished no lower, and we're talking about the Detroit Lions from 2022 through 2024. His teams have ranked no lower than number 13 in plays per game, number 13 in pass attempts per game, and number 13 in rush attempts per game. So worst case scenario, they run it at an above average pace. And at their high point, his teams have finished as high as number 2 in plays per game, number 4 in rush attempts per game, and number 9 in pass attempts per game. So this should be an offense that runs a ton of plays, moves at a very, very rapid pace. And that increased opportunity for Odunze should mean that he has a great chance to break out in year 2. Let's move to Chris Godwin. Currently, his ADP is 67th off the board, wide receiver 37. Godwin is going to be coming back from an injury, a dislocated ankle he sustained in week 7, but he should be back and ready to go for the 2025 NFL season. Last season, Godwin averaged 8.8 targets per game, 7.1 receptions per game, 0.7 touchdowns per game, 82.3 receiving yards per game, and averaged 19.7 fantasy points per game. That's truly insane. If Godwin would have remained healthy, he might have finished as a top 5 wide receiver, and his price would have been much higher than it is right now. Throughout his career, Godwin has thrived in the slot. Just look at 2019, where he ranked number 12 amongst wide receivers in slot snaps. He finished as the wide receiver 2 in fantasy points per game that season with 19.6 fantasy points per game. In 2021, when Godwin ranked number 8 amongst wide receivers in slot snaps, he finished as the wide receiver 7 in fantasy points per game. In 2023, when Godwin ranked number 26 amongst wide receivers in slot snaps, he finished as the wide receiver 34 in fantasy points per game. So you can see the more slot snaps that Chris Godwin has, the better his fantasy finish. And despite the fact that the Buccaneers drafted Emeka Egbuka with their first round pick, it looks like Godwin is going to be playing in the slot once again for the Buccaneers in 2025. According to a tweet sent out by Ryan Heath at RyanJ_Heath on Twitter, Chris Godwin expects to play primarily from the slot in 2025. His slot/wide splits per fantasy points data over the last 2 seasons: slot 2.858 yards per route run, wide 1.78 yards per route run. Godwin's 16.1 underdog FPG was second best amongst wide receivers last year. And he quotes Chris Godwin here: "Last year verified for me that the slot is where I feel the most comfortable, where I can be the most involved in the game and do the most damage." So as you can see, Godwin expects to be playing in the slot, and he also graded out very well according to reception perception. He had an 81st percentile win rate against man, 88th percentile win rate against zone, and a 67th percentile win rate against press. And while Godwin wasn't great at running deep routes, if he primarily plays in the slot, he won't have to run deep routes because the Buccaneers have Mike Evans and Jalen McMillan and now Emeka Egbuka, who can all stretch the field. The Bucs should also be in an offensive environment in which a wide receiver like Godwin can thrive. The Bucs ranked number 16 in pass attempts per game last year with 32.7, number 4 in points scored per game at 29, and they returned Baker Mayfield at quarterback. There is a new offensive coordinator in Josh Gizzard, but it looks like he is likely to run a similar, if not the same scheme as Liam Cohen did last year. So I don't know if that change is going to matter all that much for a player like Chris Godwin, and his upside is massive. And the only risk that I can really see is the fact that he is coming back from an injury and he is older, but I'm willing to lean into that uncertainty because of the upside. The next player we're going to talk about, and the last player that we're going to talk about, is Josh Downs. And Josh Downs currently 84th player off the board, wide receiver 46. I'm not sure if Josh Downs broke out in 2024, but he definitely took a major step forward. In 2024, Downs finished as the wide receiver 35 overall and the wide receiver 28 in fantasy points per game. Downs ranked number 28 in targets amongst wide receivers with 107, number 19 in target share with 25.6, and number 69 in snap share with 65.9% snap share. And my guess is the Colts will use Downs more in 2025. The quarterback situation is less than ideal. I get it. And Downs was better with Joe Flacco last season. With Joe Flacco, he averaged 15.6 fantasy points per game. And with Anthony Richardson, he averaged just 10.7 fantasy points per game. And this is a situation where I believe Downs is more talented than most people realize. And I'm betting that talent will translate into more fantasy points for us this season. For starters, his reception perception data is phenomenal. He has a 90th percentile win rate against man, 92nd percentile win rate against zone, and an 82nd percentile win rate against press. When you look at his chart, according to reception perception, success by route, really the only weakness is the 9 route, the deep route. And according to Fantasy Points data, Downs ranked among the elite wide receivers in their threat metric, which measures targets per aimed pass on passing play snaps. Despite being in quarterback flux throughout the season, the Colts ranked number 16 in points scored per game last season with 22.2 points scored per game. Their defense also wasn't very good as they ranked number 24 in points allowed per game, 25.1. They have added Charvarius Ward at corner, Cam Bynum at free safety, JT Tuamaloa in round 2 of the NFL draft. So they should be better, but they probably won't be great. This is a Colts team that's still going to have to put up points if they want to stay in games. The Colts did add Tyler Warren in round 1, but outside of him, Michael Pittman and perhaps Alec Pierce, Downs should have a relatively clean path to targets in 2025, especially considering he plays primarily out of the slot, where he ranked number 8 amongst wide receivers in slot snaps with 437. So at his current price, Downs is a wide receiver that I just have to draft in 2025. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to let me know which wide receivers you must draft this season in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video if you liked it, ring the alarm bell until it goes ding to be notified of new content when it drops. And until next time, be good, everybody, and we will see you later.